What's up, internet? It's that time again. New league, new build update. Now, before I get started here, if you have never played Freezing Pulse Totems before, this video is not an entire build guide. If you're looking for that, check the description of the video. There will be a link to the Path of Exile forums where I have the entire text guide. It's been updated for 3.13 by the time you watch this, so if that's what you're looking for, head over there. This video, like I usually do every league, is specifically just for the update to what's happening with Freezing Pulse Totems. Otherwise, I wind up making an 1.5 hour long video, completely unedited, and nobody is happy, except people that are trying to fall asleep. Thankfully, well, I don't know if I should say thankfully, there aren't a lot of changes to think about for 3.13, which is to say, if you've played this build before, for the most part, you can play it again. Unfortunately, all the changes that we're going to talk about here are not good, because the only thing that's changed came with the Ascendancy revamp. Well, the Ascendancy rebalance, I guess. There were 3 reworks for like Elementalist, Deadeye, and Inquisitor, but all the other Ascendancies got changed, and Hierophant obviously was among them. So we'll run down really quick what exactly changed here in Hierophant. These are the 3.12 trees, and I'll tell you exactly what's going on here. The main changes are here in the totem line for us, which for whatever reason we basically got nerfed. I couldn't tell you why exactly, but it is just the net outcome of what happened. In Pursuit of Faith, this node no longer has the 6% increased damage per enemy killed, and it no longer has the increased attack and cast speed while you have a totem. Replacing those two is a 100% increased totem placement speed. The reason that happened is because in Ritual of Awakening, they have removed the skills that would summon a totem, summon 2 totems instead. So currently, even if we don't run multiple totems, we still drop 2 totems at the same time because we're a Hierophant. That's being removed in 3.13. Again, your guess is as good as mine on that one. They've also removed the 50% totem placement speed because they've doubled it and moved it over here to Pursuit of Faith. Now, the net effect of both of these... Well, actually, I should mention the 3% more damage per totem is also getting buffed up to 5% per totem. So there is some offset here. But ultimately, what's happening is there's a lot more pressure on us to run multiple totems as our final link. And I say our final link because I don't think I would want to run this any earlier than roughly the time I would get a 6th link. But ultimately, if you don't run multiple totems, you're going to be dropping 1 totem at a time instead of 2. So normally we didn't run multiple totems in the past as a Hierophant because we already dropped 2 totems at the same time, meaning that even though we got +2 to maximum totems, they were 20% weaker. And so your single target just kind of stayed the same. You know, you had weaker totems, but you had 2 more of them. There was no meaningful difference. Like in your total DPS, it was just a complete wash. And whether it was like, depending on the setup, it might be 1 or 2% higher, 1 or 2% lower, that's irrelevant, right? There's no reason to socket a support gem and get the same DPS when it comes with the requirement of actually having to put down more totems to get there, right? Especially when this has a much higher mana multiplier than most of your other options. However, the opportunity cost is different now. Because we only place 1 totem at a time, now you still have to deal with the less damage penalty. That hasn't changed. But there's a big difference now because dropping 1 totem, you're not getting both totems hitting at full strength at the same time like before. So ultimately, multiple totems is now kind of filling the same role that it does when you play totems in another class, where it does increase your clear speed because you have 2 totems. They're only hitting, the 20% less damage, but you have twice as many of them hitting immediately. So we probably will wind up running this gem. It's not guaranteed, I think, in the sense that I'm a little bit concerned about the impact this is going to have on our ability to freeze consistently. right? That's probably the main downside here. If our single target wouldn't normally change, and I guess it would be fair to say that because of the Ritual Awakening change going from 3 to 5, your single target is actually going to go up slightly because the 6% increased damage wasn't doing anything in a boss fight, right? But it's going to go up whether you were... If you were running multiple totems in 3.12, you're still going to get a little bit of an increase in 3.13 if you run multiple totems again. And if you weren't, then your single target maximum throughput is also going to go up slightly. But that per damage loss, like that per hit loss, is what I think will be the only thing that would push me out of running multiple totems in Ritual League. It kind of remains to be seen. It's something you're going to be able to brute force with gear at the high end. Like if you had a profile like this, you know, and your totems are still doing like, you know, 2 to 2.5 million at least per totem with multiple totems, sure, your freezing effects are probably not going to be terribly impacted in most situations. I'm much more concerned about the sort of like tail end of white maps through yellow maps kind of region and getting into reds, where that's sort of around the somewhere in there you're probably going to pick up your 6-link, and then you would slot multiple totems and suddenly your ability to freeze tanks at the same time. So we're going to have to play that by ear. Push come to shove, we probably just go back to our old link setup and go back to running Frost Bomb in a multiple totem setup, so that we still, because we definitely want to get to at least 6 totems. Like we want to get that +2 to maximum number of summon totems still. We used to do that by turning Frost Bomb into a multi-totem. If you run multiple totem in your primary link, you can't do that anymore because this is a local mod. So this would have a maximum of 6 totems, and so would this. So it wouldn't benefit you. For now, I am planning and at least recommending in the guide to slot multiple totems for your 6-link specifically, I would say. I think earlier than that, you might struggle to freeze things too much at a 5-link level of damage. The other change it's worth mentioning is Conviction of Power. A lot of people were really impressed with the change to Conviction of Power, and I gotta say, I think it's just here, it's just whatever. What they've done is basically all of the text on this is gone. Nothing here is in 3.13. The way Conviction of Power is in 3.13 is that you get +4 to minimum endurance and power charges, and then +1 to maximum endurance and power charges, so that you can actually use 4 minimum charges. It doesn't have the reduced elemental damage taken while you have an endurance charge, or the damage penetration while you have a power charge anymore. So the net effect of that, right, is that instead of having to generate charges when we summon totems, we're just going to have 4 permanent power and endurance charges forever. Literally forever, until you unspec that node, because they can't be spent. So if you have a Mortal Call right now, consuming your endurance charges for those increased effects, that's something you won't be able to do in 3.13 unless you add another source of endurance generation and add some source of maximum endurance charge, so that you actually have a non-minimum endurance charge to spend. So if you think about it, what's actually changing here is we're trading those 2 5% modifiers for 1 more endurance and power charge. And instead of generating them, we just have them up permanently. Now, personally, the power charges had 100% uptime. There's really no change in the sustain of our power charges. You're never dropping your power charges. Your endurance charges also were generally up 100% of the time, but it wasn't as guaranteed. Especially if there was any downtime, or were situations where you were forced to move for significant chunks where you couldn't stop and place totems again. It's pretty rare, even in boss fights, where you can't summon totems and have a decent chance to refresh your next endurance charge. But it is something, right? It's definitely, there was not 100% uptime on endurance charges, I would say, but it was really high, like probably well into the high 90s. So there's not really much changing in your endurance and power charge uptime. It's just mostly that consideration of Well, I have one more endurance and power charge, which is 40% more crit chance and 4% more physical damage reduction, 4% all resist, I think, versus the 5% reduced elemental damage taken and the 5% damage penetration. All told, it's one of those changes where it just feels like a net nothing, right? It's a wash. I would argue maybe the one endurance charge is a little bit more desirable to us specifically than the 5% reduced elemental damage taken. Just because physical damage is a little bit more threatening to us than elemental damage has been. But I think the power charge generally straight up loses the 5% damage pen. Not by a huge margin though. And we actually probably will want a little bit more crit help anyway, because even at the lower levels, it's going to be harder to justify ever running increased critical strikes unless we just abandoned the multiple totems idea altogether. And ultimately, that's basically all that's changed for the Hierophant. We basically just kind of got punched in the face. I feel like maybe Hierophant accidentally stood in front of the Necromancer when they tried to shoot her this league, and she just didn't get shot very hard because we took most of that bullet. On the upside, we took that bullet, in the shoulder. Ultimately, we're basically just losing clear speed and some quality of life. We're not losing any single target. We're actually gaining slightly in the single target context. We technically are also gaining like 6% mana because this minor changed. Like endurance charge duration and power charge duration doesn't do anything if they assume your charges are permanent. So they changed this to 8% increased max mana, and they actually lowered this to 8%. But because we have 2, we're getting 16% mana out of our Ascendancy instead of 10, just in these minors. But obviously, it's whatever. We had a lot of mana anyway. But that's really it, right? Like there wasn't a change to multiple totem support. To I think it needs to be a better balanced gem, frankly. And there was no change to spell totem support to lessen the impact, say, of the I guess I can't even look at it because it's all mental. But nothing to reduce the penalty inherent to spell totem. So unfortunately, there's not much upside for the Freezing Pulse totem build in this upcoming patch. If we take a look at the Path of Building, this is the Path of Building I have updated for 3.13. I'll put that in the description too, and you can also find that in the forum guide. I'll link in the description. The gear profile here is pretty conservative, right? Like if you feel like this number went down a lot compared to 3.12's example Path of Building, it's because I normalized the gear a little bit more to be more conservative. And also we have multiple totems in the primary link here. So you can see that our average hit is like 250. It used to be, assuming this was 3.12, and I was just running my normal, increased crit strikes here. We had about, 3.2 million in this conservative setup with a 400,000 average hit. And we used to just, that's why we didn't run the multiple totems before, basically, is because our clear speed just dropped. If we're already dropping 2 totems and they're each hitting for an average of 400k, I didn't want to swap that out for multiple totems and drop 2 totems that hit for an average of 250k, right? But these are different times. And now it's a decision between 1 totem that's going to hit for 400k and 2 totems that's going to hit for 500k between the both of them while you're clearing. Once you actually ramp up to 6, like you can see there's actually a single target penalty here to be incurred in this setup, which is what I was saying. It fluctuates a little bit, but it's just kind of a whatever. It's actually the most severe in this conservative setup that I've seen compared to most of my high-end setups. Where right here we're getting 3 million 30,000 versus 3.17 or something like that. But the clear difference is going to be noticeable. It's because essentially our first hit damage is going to go from 400 to 500k, right? Which is a 25% increase. And that's one of the most relevant stats when you're thinking about clear speed. How fast do I drop my totem? How much damage does it do immediately? And how quickly can I start moving? Multiple totems is pretty relevant to all those factors. Didn't used to be, but it is now. Otherwise, everything else about the build is the same, right? Since we're running multiple totems here, we're going to go back to the old way of running Frost Bomb, which is just like in a 4-link. And you really don't even need this to be in a 4-link. If you have other gems that you like running in this build for whatever reason, you just want, you know, I don't even know. Actually, I saw a pretty good idea on Reddit the other day where somebody was talking about the phantasmal version of Searing Bond. In fact, if I put that up here, I'll show you what they were talking about. The phantasmal version of this gem, right? Searing Bond already has a +1 maximum number of summon totems by default. But the phantasmal variant gives it another +1 to maximum summon totems per 10 quality. So at 20 quality, you actually have +3 to max. And then you could link this to an enhance. If I could spell it correctly. Especially an enhance 4, which would push it all the way up to +5. Well, at +5 max, that means locally, Searing Bond would have a max of 9 totems. So even if we were running multiple totems in our primary link like this, which is a 6 max local, we'd have room for 3 more Searing Bond totems. Which would, you know, we go from 6 to 9, that's a pretty sizable buff, right? So we're 10% total damage. It's another 1.5% mana regen. It's another 3% life regen. That's not trivial. I'm not recommending it right now for 2 reasons. One, it's not going to be easy to get a Phantasmal Searing Bond in 3.13. People did not like Heist. I don't think you're going to see people running tons of blueprints. And the people that do, good luck getting them to try and pick Searing Bond for their gem choice, right? So it's something you're probably going to have to find yourself. And again, good luck trying to get any one particular gem out of Heist. There's so many potential alternate qualities, you're just not going to see it. Maybe you'll find it in trade. Maybe somebody will be random enough to pick it up, but I wouldn't bet on it, basically. And it's also going to be really annoying, right? You've already got 6 Freezing Pulse totems you have to maintain, and then you'd have another 3 Searing Bonds that you'd be dropping individually, and they all probably have something like 7,000 life at rank 20, which is not much, which means they're going to die a bunch during a boss fight when you actually put these down. So there's definitely like a big downside to doing it, but I think you have the room here. You know, you probably don't need anything more than either Spell Cascade or Second Wind linked to Frost Bomb. So you could just add these 2 and pull out 2 of these supports, and you'd get, you know, 15% more damage, if that sounds like something you can tolerate doing during a boss fight. But yeah, otherwise, everything's pretty much the same. We're going to lose a bunch of clear speed, basically, just because we don't have that advantage of being able to drop full strength totems twice at a time. And we lost the Pursuit of Faith damage bonus, which is really big. A lot of people don't seem to appreciate how strong Pursuit of Faith was. When you're talking about a 6% increased damage per enemy killed, you know, it's not uncommon that in higher level content, especially content they're juicing, to have 100 stacks of this, which is 600% increased damage. It was like a 30% more multiplier, you know what I mean? And it's unfortunate to see it go at the time when they're introducing both an expansion and a league that are so heavily like mapping and density focused. They're adding the Ritual League, which is basically a map density buff. And there's all kinds of stuff in the Atlas skill trees where you're going to be able to add guaranteed density and things like that. And that's the exact time when they nerfed this node. That's probably actually the nerf that bugs me the most, is Pursuit of Faith. Losing the cast speed actually hurts here too. Cast speed is a very, very powerful stat for this build. If you've played it before, I'm sure you know that. And that definitely eats into the single target you might actually gain overall, compared to 3.12 anyway. Just because it's like a 3 to 4% damage loss to lose that 10% cast speed. And we just don't make it, you know, especially in clear wise, you're not making that back from the Ritual Awakening buff. So I wish I had better news. All that said, I feel like we had clear speed to spare, I guess. When I look at the other builds in this game, you know, I feel like a lot of builds had a lot more clear speed to spare than us, but we did, it feels like, have some clear speed to spare. And I would say single target has generally been weaker for this build, even compared to some other totem builds. It's not like unappreciated to get a single target increase. But yeah, overall, the changes are a pretty big disappointment. And frankly, I hope they revisit them. Whether that's to make some adjustments to multiple totems itself, or to just lessen the impact of the nerf onto Pursuit of Faith. I'm not sure. I just feel like some change needs to be made here to restore Pursuit of Faith's contribution a little bit. As far as our last Ascendancy, it's still going to be Divine Guidance, I think. This node didn't change in 3.13, and I think you'll really feel it if you try to drop this. There was a buff to Illuminated Devotion and Arcane Blessing, which they swapped the position of these two nodes, and so this one here actually moves over here in the 2-pointer. The Immune to Elemental Ailments thing stays up here in the 4-pointer, but you do get 50% increased effective Arcane Surge on you in this node now, or technically this node. I really wouldn't trade Conviction of Power or Divine Guidance for this, I think, but it's something to consider at least. It didn't really used to be a consideration at all because it was so far away. You'll probably get somewhere around 10% total damage from 50% increased effective Arcane Surge. But it's coming at the cost of like Conviction of Power or Divine Guidance. I really wouldn't drop Divine Guidance defensively. And Conviction of Power just seems like too consistent and balanced of a buff. The 4 endurance charges are really useful when we have so little physical damage reduction and basically no armor. But it's something to consider, I suppose, especially if you're running Agnostic. If you're one of the builds that are swapping out one of these, swapping out part of your skill tree to get down here to Agnostic, I think you should more seriously consider the Arcane Blessing, because it's going to be a lot more mana regen. Yeah. All told, ultimately, we take the same nodes, we take the same skill tree. We're probably going to run multiple totems now. It's going to be a little bit more annoying to color our chest. Like, typically, you would only color a chest like this when you wanted to add in power, which is what used to be here. Like, if you had a Corrupted +1 chest. And now, you probably want to do it as soon as you get a 6th link, which is pretty feels bad. Just as a random tip, if you're trying to do this on your 6th link in 3.13, do it at the bench. Go get your delve recipes and use the at least 1 green socket. This is the most efficient way to get this 3 green, 1 red, 2 blue setup. It'll take you an average of like 400 chromes or something. Obviously RNG could make that 800, could make it 100, but that is the cheapest way to get this color configuration on the chest. Anyway, as usual, I will be streaming League Start. I'm going to be playing a lot this league, I gotta tell you. This is still going to be my League Starter. I'm not overly concerned, all told, about these nerfs. What I'm mostly looking forward to are these Atlas changes that are coming in 3.13. The Atlas skill trees look like probably one of the best additions to this game I've ever seen. And there's even more stuff on top of that, right? With the Maven fight and the new Ritual League. So I'm going to be playing a lot. If you want to stop by, you can catch me at twitch.tv/WallachTV. I'll be streaming straight away from League Start. And, yeah. Expect some League Start updates from me, because I'm going to want to talk a lot about how it actually feels, like these nerfs feel in practice from the Act 3 on, basically. I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to the feel of the build as soon as we take Pursuit of Faith all the way up into red maps, because I think that's where you're going to feel the impact of these changes the most. Anyway, until then, I'll see you guys Friday, and I hope you enjoy League Start. Peace.